So our final panel consists of planners from the cities of Mountlake Terrace and Redmond to talk about how their communities have planned for and implemented sustainable development. Our first speaker is Shane Hope. She is the Community and Economic Development Director for the city of Mountlake Terrace. She provides leadership in developing and implementing the city's sustainability strategy and promoting economic vitality and housing choices and working extensively with regional partners. Shane previously served as the Managing Director for Growth Management Services for the state of Washington, which included understanding and interpreting the Growth Management Act and providing technical assistance to local governments. Shane also worked as the governor's policy coordinator for the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area. She was the managing director for several statewide community economic development programs, including Main Street Revitalization and the Community Revitalization Team. And she was a former planner of the Thurston Regional Planning Council and a past City of Olympia Planning Commission member. Please welcome Shane Hope.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you tonight. And you're here for an exciting topic, and you've stayed this long in the evening. I know you really care, and that's good. And I'm here because I care. Sustainability is a topic that has many facets, and you've explored a number of them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience that we've had in Mountlake Terrace around this subject. But I won't get so much into the exactly what our plan says and that kind of thing. I'll be talking more about how we've implemented it and how that's working out. So let's start with how in Mountlake Terrace we have planned for sustainability. We do have a sustainability strategy. This was adopted in 2008. But it's also been backed by our comprehensive plans, comprehensive plan and other different types of planning that we've done. For example, we had a comprehensive plan that called for sustainability and conservation and those kinds of things. And it was kind of a natural when we did our critical area regulations that people started saying, well, that's good, but can't we do more? Can't we do more? And so we started working towards what at the time we called a conservation strategy, but later changed it to be a little broader based to recognize that it was a sustainability strategy integrating environmental quality, climate change, community livability, and economic health. So it does cover a lot of territory. Now, about the same time, or just after, we also launched our economic vitality strategy because we see these things as closely connected. The economic vitality strategy also bridges with the sustainability strategy in having a clean tech element to it. So we were looking at clean technology. It's again a win for the economy and good for sustainability. So we saw those two things as closely tied together. In the sustainability strategy itself, we looked at kind of two ways of thinking. One was, what could we as a city, as an organization, do to be more sustainable? What can we do as an organization? The second thing was, what can we do to encourage others outside of our particular city family, our organization? What can we do to encourage others, whether it's businesses, residents, or whatever? So those were the two things that we were working towards in the sustainability strategy. And then with the idea of we need performance measures to kind of keep track of where we're going and how we're doing on all of those things. Again, the idea of the city being an example. What can we do as a city? We looked for things and we identified them in our sustainability strategy in a number of ways, but just some examples of those would include things that we do for city buildings. So adopting a LEED silver minimum for our city buildings being one example of the policies that we took that came out of this sustainability strategy. Energy efficiency in our buildings, fuel efficiency for fleet vehicles, and so on, as well as partnerships, knowing that infrastructure is a big thing that cities do, counties do as well, and we could be more sustainable in all of those things, so that we as a city are being a good example, doing the right thing. So that's what our strategy said there. And then when it talked about encouraging others, and again, I'm just giving you examples because there are many things that this strategy actually talked about. But encouraging others means, what do we do to influence others that are not within City Hall per se? But we could develop other plans and strategies that reached out to other areas that tie in with sustainability. We knew we could update our own codes and our standards so that they would also support the concept of more sustainability, whether you're talking about, say, solar panels and how to make that easier to permit, or other things to do with our own codes and standards. And I'll give you more examples of what we actually did about those things in a bit. Also, we knew that public information, public education would be critical, because there are a lot of people that want to do something, they're kind of aware, but unless we really reach out to them in multiple ways over multiple periods of time, they would not understand necessarily what was going on. They wouldn't necessarily be a part of it. So we wanted to keep that information and involvement going. And also, what could we do to help the homes and businesses be better for themselves at energy efficiency or conservation of water and those kinds of things. And then certainly providing incentives and awards to help recognize those folks who were doing good things was another way that the city could reach out. Again, these are examples from our strategy. On the land use side of the strategy, we really wanted to focus on things about how we grow and develop and revitalize. So compact development, I think we all know that there's a lot of advantages there from a sustainability standpoint when you compare it to a sprawl pattern of land use where you just keep growing outward and using up more farmlands and rural areas and so on. So instead, we wanted to really focus on compact development. Now, that's a challenge for some of our residents. We're actually the second densest city in Western Washington, one of the densest in the Pacific Northwest, being a fairly small city, but it's pretty well built on. There's not a lot of empty land left. So that would be a challenge. But we knew that we actually could be even a better and more vibrant city by redeveloping and doing infill and so on in a way that would also promote sustainability. So compact development, especially focusing on our town center, was important, but not only our town center. And then all the things about making our community more walkable, more bikeable, would also help with sustainability, getting away from car dependency and so on, making more options possible. We also wanted to make more with a range of housing choices. As we know, a lot of times in communities, there's, particularly there used to be, I think we're all getting away from that a little more, the idea that, gee, you have some kinds of walk-up apartments over here, and you have single-family houses over here, and with big lots, and there's not much in between, was the style and popular in the 70s. I think we've all tried to get away from that a little bit more and let more people have more choices. And I'll talk about some of the choices that we opened up to in this process and alongside it. Also, of course, orienting more towards our transit options. And that, of course, ties in with compact development, especially around those transit accessible areas. And mix of uses in our downtown as well as in some other areas of town. We also knew that part of our land use needed to be having attractive places that people want to go and be a part of. Parks would be a wonderful example, but it could be other things as well. All of those are parts of things that you do on a regular basis in terms of planning, but again, it all ties back together. Now, when it comes to implementation, we also saw, similar to how we broke it up about the city being an example and then influencing others, was that implementation was also both internal, what do we do as an organization to keep track of all of this and to see how we're doing over the future, and what kinds of implementation can we do to help influence others? What do we do? We have these nice goals and strategies, but what do we actually do to make them happen and to make a difference? So one of the things was to have what I've got up there as a matrix of responsibilities. This is a long spreadsheet, Excel details of who does what. With each strategy, it breaks it down into, well, what does this mean? Is it the police department that has the lead on this? And who do they work with? Is it by themselves, or do they work with others? And who needs to be involved? What's a general time frame? Not a day and month necessarily, but what is it? A short term? Is this a midterm strategy? Is it a longer term? And so on. So that there are a number of things on this spreadsheet that help remind us of what we need to do. And again, recognizing it's not all going to be done at once, but continuing to take bites at that apple would be very important. We looked then at having performance measures. We did this in our comprehensive plan as well. We've taken a fairly simple approach. One can make up 100 measures of all of the wonderful things that you're doing, but it's not necessarily any better than having half a dozen measures that you can come back to and that make sense to people. So every community gets to decide what's reasonable for themselves, I think, but having a set of performance measures that you can count on. You don't have to do big gyrations to go back and measure it each year. It's something you can keep track of and do that. So like with our comprehensive plan, where we had one for each element or chapter, we did one for each of the major goals in the strategy. So that meant something on education, mobility, green spaces, energy, water, and then resources and material use. Some of these things, particularly such as green spaces, dealt a lot with our external process, and some of the others, particularly, say, education, would be something that we do ourselves, but we do for and with others. And, of course, we had a green team, have a green team. A green team being representatives from each department that can help champion sustainability in the city as an organization, and some of them also work then with others outside of the organization, excuse me, to keep this going. Green team meets regularly. They talk about what they've been doing, how they're doing on their spreadsheets, following up, and on the performance measures. And then we report that back to the City Council and to the Planning Commission through different public meetings, at least once a year, on all the performance measures. And again, by involving all of those departments, they feel that they are part of it, because they are. It's not done in a vacuum. And then we also began to work more on our infrastructure, things that we could do with our own public facilities. For example, doing more to add bike lanes and add LED. You can see over on that far side, LED lighting. So we've got all of our city-owned street lights are LED lights. We did part of that from some work with our power provider, that we got a break, and we had a little bit of grant money and a little bit of this and that, and shuffled around until we could make it work. And so we had a couple different phases, and now we have all LED streetlights. And then we did things with our stormwater, for example, improving some things, areas where we had some flooding and where there was stormwater going where it wasn't supposed to be, and we took some actions on that, and improved the habitat around it while we improved the flooding problems. And also, we have you can see on that far side there, we have what's been a city golf course, 9 holes, right next to an 18-hole golf course owned by the Shriners. And the city has had that golf course for quite a while and tried desperately to make it work. We've had different concessionaires and so on making this golf course work. And it's a nice little golf course, actually. But it's also right next to the lake. And so finally, we decided enough with this golf course. Let's make it a park. So we're in the process now of converting that to a passive park where a lot of people can be, not only golfers, but a lot of different people can enjoy that park. and begin to let the grass grow and make some trails and do some other improvements. We're taking it a step at a time. We don't have lots of money to go out and do the master plan right now, so instead we've done some kind of phased planning, and then we had a UW student team come in and work with us on some options to help our Rec and Parks committee see what could be done, what made sense, and kept that going. We also looked at electric vehicle charging stations and decided we could go for a grant. We got 10 of them, put those in, and they're being used, and they're a lot of fun. They're not all being used, I should say, so a couple of them we have bagged right now so that they can be used by others until the need comes up, but we've done a lot with that. Other kinds of planning that we've done include electric vehicle strategy, which dealt with what we can do as a city to green our fleet, and so we've done a number of things, while at the same time we encourage others. And I'll talk about, well, let me just say, with that, another phase of it was to actually adopt regulations whereby every new development in the city must put in electric vehicle charging facilities. There's a ratio based on the size and number of units and all those kinds of things. Even a new single-family home would have to at least put in the wiring for it in a proper place. They wouldn't have to put in a station necessarily, but they have to put the wiring in. So we've got all those kinds of different levels of things. We've got a town center plan. We've got a transportation master plan that's tied closely to our comp plan, and that really focuses on sidewalk priorities, as well as transit orientation. Number of other things that you can see up on that screen that we've been working on with planning. And then with our code updates, which are really important. You can have lots of nice plans, but unless you make them go to work, they don't help you tremendously. So we went through all these things. For example, housing choices. We allow cottage housing, both as well as accessory dwellings and different types of townhomes and live-work units and all of those things in a number of places throughout the town. We also allowed for smaller lot sizes in a large part of the town. Actually, more than a third of the residential areas can also do small lot housing. And there's a whole list of other things, planned actions being one of them. So we have 2 planned action areas where we combine the EIS work and the planning work and make it a faster process for development to get up and do good things. Again, tools and incentives, well, planned action ordinances that put that in place are one part of the incentive. We also have the transportation benefit district. We have multifamily property tax abatement whereby someone can come in, they can build the kind of mixed-use project, for example, that we want in our town center, and they get a tax break on the multifamily units. They still pay their taxes on commercial and on the land, but they get a break on for 8 years on the housing. Well, that's a big plus, particularly in this kind of market. If you're not already in the highest demand area, having these kinds of incentives can help, and we've been getting development that's just doing those very things. Some of the things that we're working on currently would be an urban forestry program. We're also we're exploring district energy, having that possibility. No time for the details. We're working on light rail. We will have a light rail station, at least one light rail station in our city. And then we're working with a number of jurisdictions in King County as well as some in Snohomish County and a couple other outliers as well on what we call regional code collaboration. So we're trying to identify things that we can go above and beyond all the building codes and above and beyond some of the typical zoning codes and what we can do to combine. I think Redmond's also involved in that, some of our other city colleagues. And that's going to be interesting as we take that the next step as well. This shows what's happening in our downtown. We have 49 significant projects going on in our city, 4 square miles, 49 projects. That's quite a bit. This is our town center, the visual of our town center, but things are actually happening. We have a number of projects that are going on. We have public money as well as private money going on. Here's one of our new projects, mixed-use project, 5 stories over 2 levels of parking garage. It's actually 125 units there, 10,000 square feet of commercial. That's the kind of thing we wanted to see. It's happening. We have more projects similar that are underway. One is the foundations are being laid down now, and the other one is ready to go either within the next couple months, or they may have to wait till spring. So a lot of things like that are happening. We've been building bigger sidewalks, better sidewalks, the amenities that we envisioned in our town center plan. I have a Main Street project going where we're going to make the street sidewalks and things go further. So that's underway. Challenges, of course, I think you've heard others touch on them. The staff resources, basically, it's just the time and money to make things happen. Selecting performance measures, again, I believe it's important to choose ones that you can keep track of. And then continuing to find funding, making sure that there are leaders who can continue the work, and that there's communication with the public. And that's so, so important. Lessons that I think you can consider out of that would be getting broad commitment, communicating in many different ways with people, whether it's web or orally or newsletters or whatever it is, and thinking comprehensively for sustainability, and then report on the performance regularly and celebrate your successes. That's what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. So next we have Lori Peckall with the City of Redmond. She is the manager for the long-range planning team and has 25 years of planning experience involving land use, housing, transportation, capital facilities, and economic development. Her experience includes municipal, county, regional, and private sector planning. Lori has master's degrees in city and regional planning and public administration from the Ohio State University and a BA in sociology from OSU. So she will be cheering on the Buckeyes for a win against Illinois on Saturday so that they can continue undefeated. Please welcome Lori.
Thank you, Heather. So I'm really struck this evening just hearing about all the great work that's underway and all the great examples, and it's just really inspiring. And I'm just really reminded of, as we think about sustainability, what a big difference the actions make, be it the ones we take as individuals or as organizations or cities or businesses. So it's really, really great to be here this evening, and thank you for being here this evening. I am going to echo some of the themes I've been hearing this evening, and then hopefully also provide some new ideas that will be helpful as you think about how to move forward with this work in your own communities. So this evening, what I'm going to do is, well, actually stepping back. So we completed a major update to our comprehensive plan at the end of 2011, and sustainability was a major theme and framework for that plan update. So what I'm going to talk about this evening are a few of the sustainability opportunities and challenges we thought about in beginning that work. I'm going to briefly describe how we approach sustainability, and then share some of the strategies that we are using and plan to use both on a community and then on a neighborhood basis. And I look forward to hearing your insights and questions at the end of the session. So first, a little bit about Redmond today. There are about 56,000 people who live in the city, and nearly 80,000 people who work there. We have about 10 neighborhoods. 2 of those are our regional growth center neighborhoods. Other ones are mostly residential, some both business and residential. So as we thought about beginning our comprehensive plan update, of course, we needed to address the updates to the Growth Management Act and to our regional plans that have occurred. We also needed to extend our horizon to 2030. And then, as with any community, a lot of things had changed since we updated our plan the last time in 2005. And those were the kinds of opportunities and challenges that we wanted to look at with our plan update on the sustainability front. So one of them, first of all, a characteristic that for Redmond on the sustainability front is both an opportunity and a challenge, is that we are a really large job center. We're one of the largest in the region. And while many of the people who work in Redmond live on the east side, others come from many places in the central Puget Sound region. So while that's a plus from an economic sustainability standpoint to have that job base, it also poses challenges for us because we have such a big gap between the number of people who work in the city of Redmond and the number of people who live here. So that creates a lot of demand on our transportation system, and it also drives up some of the housing costs. So we have a lot of people who pay more than 30% of their income for housing, so a lot of people who are cost burdened. Another challenge for us is on the infrastructure front, you know, an issue that many communities face, that while we have an urban vision, in many parts of the community, our infrastructure is very suburban in nature. We lack a street grid, we lack stormwater controls, we lack parks and really safe connections. So that it's an issue as far as people being able to walk or bicycle to where they want to get to and feel safe about it. And it also has environmental impacts in terms of the impacts on streams and on fish. And then two, it's the cost of bridging that gap between what the vision is and needing to make those retrofits. And it's a cost, as we've looked at it, that's really difficult. Even when you bring together the resources of the city and the development community, still there's a big gap. On infrastructure planning, what we realized is that over the past many years, while we've done a good job of planning on for each different functional area, be it for parks or for transportation or for stormwater, we really haven't looked at that on a long-term basis altogether. We didn't have a good sense, if you added it all up, was it a strategy that made sense? What was the overall picture? And that's especially important just, again, given the limited resources. And then finally, while we had in 2010 clear interest in sustainability from the community and from our council and from our planning commissioners and staff, there wasn't a common understanding of what does sustainability mean. And most of what we were talking about was on the environmental side, and good, though we hadn't really explored the other concepts of what does it mean from an economic standpoint. So in 2010, we kicked off our comprehensive plan update, and one of the early actions that we did was to meet with our planning commission and city council to hear from them about what do they think sustainability means and to get their initial guidance. And they were really on board with that common definition that you hear about the idea of meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future to meet their needs. They're good with the three legs of sustainability, the idea of economic, environmental, and social equity. Kind of wondered, and on the social equity side, really, what does that mean? And then they gave us some other overarching guidance. We talked about, well, should we have a separate element for sustainability in our comprehensive plan, or should we integrate it throughout? And they were really clear that they felt it was so fundamental to land use, to housing, to transportation, to all the different components, that it was important to integrate it throughout the comprehensive plan. A little bit about what Miranda talked about as well, of having kind of that sweet area where all of it comes together. And they also talked about, again, emphasizing alternatives rather than prescriptive solutions, thinking about how do we contribute to the regional context and really make a difference, and then similar to what Shane talked about, leading by example. So while this was helpful, we didn't still have really a clear picture from a community standpoint of what did sustainability mean within Redmond. So we undertook a major community conversation to answer that question. We asked people who lived in the city, who worked there, who recreated, what in Redmond, what does a sustainable community mean? What are people's priorities? And then as we think about those top priorities, thinking about what are the impacts of that? What benefits does that bring to the community? And the reason for that, to have this conversation, is really provide the basis for our comprehensive plan update and other sustainability initiatives. The outcome of that was 6 principles that our city council adopted and that are also part of our comprehensive plan, are really woven throughout each element and provided that basis again as we updated each part of the comprehensive plan. So I'll highlight just a couple of these, but one I want to note is that idea of having housing choices such that people of all ages and incomes and needs and family sizes can afford to live in Redmond and have choices. And that idea of being able to get to where you need to go, having that equitable access. And then on the economy side, a lot of value in having that diversity of businesses and local businesses. So these, as I said, guided our plan update. They weren't a diversion or major diversion from the direction we had been heading, but really just, I would say, emphasize several of those key themes. At the core of our comprehensive plan is our vision for vibrant urban centers in our traditional downtown and also in Overlake. These are our 2 regional growth centers, and improved connections both from a transportation standpoint and from a feeling of connectedness standpoint within the community, and that idea of just delivering great customer service, be it the folks who are delivering our water service, or the guys who are plowing the streets, or the people who are answering questions at the permit counter, that great customer service. So between now and 2030, we plan to grow from where we are today to a population of almost 80,000 and about 120,000 jobs. And we are planning to accommodate about 3/4 of that new housing growth and about 2/3 of our new commercial growth in our urban regional growth centers. So it's a really significant focus in those locations. And that's consistent with what we've heard from the community, really wanting to enable people to travel without cars, to be able to have the environmental benefits of living close to transit, and to have those choices in housing. So so what are our key strategies to implement that? I'm going to highlight a few. So starting off with housing. So our approach here is to really use a full menu of strategies because we have such a significant need to increase not only housing supply but also choice. And so we are using strategies that really involve direct assistance. So that's providing funding on an annual basis for housing production and preservation. We participate with an organization called a Regional Coalition for Housing. They're made up of King County plus several other cities in the area, and are really about how do we kind of marshal our resources towards that goal. And then we have also surplus land. So for example, this year, the City Council decided to surplus about an acre-sized piece of property in our downtown for senior housing. It'll be about 75 affordable senior dwellings plus space for medical services. We also do demonstration projects looking at how do we integrate housing of different types into single-family neighborhoods. And then we also have and will continue to work through our neighborhood plan updates, because what we found is that it's really most helpful to have a conversation with people in the neighborhoods of what are their, as they think about how we can reach community goals for housing, what are the strategies that they believe fit best with their neighborhoods and the ones that they support. And from that, they have been very supportive of having a variety of housing types, of having requirements for affordable housing. What's important to them is that it's designed well and fits into the neighborhood, and so that's been part of the package. We've also heard from people, as I mentioned, that it's really important to have that diverse economy, including larger businesses as well as smaller businesses. So a couple strategies we've used on that front is the Think Redmond program. It's a buying local program, though, for the purpose of supporting local businesses, helping to create jobs, decreasing the need to drive because you can go a short distance to get what you need, and then reinvesting in Redmond. So again, a lot of themes that echo that idea of sustainability. And then also our counterpart is One Redmond on the economic front. It's trying to bring together the city, our business leaders, and community organizations to really try to have that alignment as we're working on economic strategies. On the capital planning front, I mentioned that we had tended to plan individually for each functional area and hadn't really looked long-term. The Growth Management Act only requires that communities take a 6-year look at capital facility needs and revenues, but we really felt it important to look further than that. So we put together a team to do that. They pulled together all the known capital facility projects through 2030 and worked to sequence those based on principles that they set out of what is most important to implement at what point, how does that contribute to implementation of our comprehensive plan, and when you add it all up, how did the revenues and the costs compare? And this work has been really helpful to us on a variety of fronts. It provided the basis for our next capital improvement program that we put together for our budget, and really helped us to ask those hard questions about why this project now and how does that contribute to the vision. Helped us understand the long-term funding gap. We realized that while our 6-year picture is balanced, as we look out through 2030, we had about a $400,000 gap between the projects we said we needed for parks and transportation and stormwater and all, and what the revenues we projected. So that's helping us to reel back and say, yes, we want to be aspirational with our vision, but is this realistic? And it's also provided a new framework for our functional plan updates. And I'll give you one example. We just completed an update to our transportation master plan. And with that, worked really hard. This diagram is sort of a summary of it, of how do you make that linkage between the vision to the strategies to carry out that vision, and then making sure that each project maps to those strategies, and then again, the idea of performance measures to make sure that we're making progress. I've talked about some of the strategies at a community-wide basis. In our Regional Growth Center Overlake, we're also pursuing a number of strategies there. Light rail is planned and will be extended to Overlake by 2023. Those two dots in the middle show you where the two light rail stations are. So we're working on, again, a number of strategies there. On access and connectivity, it's how do we really break up the blocks. So we've planned for streets in this area and really thought about the purpose of each street so that it will be a lot more convenient for people to get to where they need to go. And then we'll also have rain gardens as part of some of these streets. We have light rail will be extended along 520. So we have been working with Sound Transit and with Microsoft to deliver 2 pedestrian bike bridges so that we can make those connections across the freeway. And then that map on the right-hand side shows you the walkshed for that. So we're making progress on that. In terms of connections, some of the challenges that we're continue to wrestle with is light rail will only be extended to that upper white dot to Northeast 40th, which is part of the Microsoft campus. So the question is, how do we get people to light rail until it's extended to downtown Redmond in the future? And then also just how do we connect people to transit in general, how to make those connections? So we're still working on that. We are also working to provide some parks in this area. I mentioned not much in the way of infrastructure now. We thought about a couple of different ways to provide stormwater, either to continue to do it on a property by property basis or to handle it on a regional basis. Decided the regional approach is really the most efficient, cost-effective, environmentally beneficial approach. So the city is going to build 3 vaults in this area, and they will be where those the 2 orange sections there, and then one at the top. And then property owners, developers will pay into that at the time. So it's a win all the way around. And then certainly a win from an environmental standpoint. We are also looking at district energy. We've done a pre-feasibility study, found that there are benefits from an energy standpoint and cost. So we're beginning to look at that, and so an effort that's underway. And then almost last on housing choices, I'd mentioned some of the things that we're doing on a citywide basis. In this area, we are also requiring that a pretty significant portion of any new development be housing. It ranges from about 1/4 to 1/2 of any new development in order to try to close that housing gap. And some of the challenges we're still trying to deal with is how do we create neighborhoods that are good for families of all ages and sizes. I mentioned most of our growth will be funneled to this location. How do we make that a great neighborhood? And then how do we achieve even greater affordability? So last, just a word on private investment. We are starting to see some investment. Happy about that. The property that is outlined in yellow there is a former group health campus. We worked with them to put together a master plan for that 28-acre site. And earlier this year, they sold it to a firm called Capstone Partners. This gives you a sense of what is underway for that property. They're starting to do some, well, they've done some clearing starting on the construction probably over the next year. And one of our challenges we see in this area is while we're starting to see some investment, we expect that because it's basically for those who have been to this area now, it's a retail area. A lot of the strip shopping centers and low density office parks, and it's doing reasonably well from an economic standpoint. So we expect that probably a lot of the property owners will hang back, kind of wait and see what happens. And so it may be some time until there's additional interest and investment in there. So we need to continue to keep people in the loop and pull them in. And to that goal, we have been pleased to participate as part of a Growing Transit Communities project The Puget Sound region also received a HUD grant, and so we have been participating as part of that. And one of the projects has been, how do we really connect with people who would not typically get involved in planning activities because they either, English is not their first language, they're busy with other things, how do we get them engaged? So we have been working to really strengthen that within this neighborhood, and have heard from people that housing, affordability, transit are really important to them. So we're hoping to really build that group who will help to be advocates in the future. So with that, we'll close and turn it back to Heather.